You did it. You came back on a Monday night for part 2 of the amazing Dan French professional rhetorician. Except for this time, I take Dan French to the woodshed. What am I saying? Things got heated. Things got out of control. He thought some little old pathetic Christian comedian conservative couldn't hold a candle to him. Well, I got 2 candles and a bowling ball. Why the bowling ball? I panicked. But the candles came in handy. Why? Because I wanted to illuminate what it looks like when somebody actually cares about what is true about life and is able to debate with those who are professionals therein. Dan French is our guest this week, coming up on part 2 of that amazing interview that started last week. It's also the first time we are going to talk about the people who have joined not just the militia of the mind, not just the mighty 10,000, but the special forces to get their free t-shirts and everything else that goes with it. This is a culmination of me preparing you for a telethon of getting more viewers and preparing for the major leagues when we launch on the Salem Network with Brad Stine Has Issues. And they were thinking about maybe not using me, and then they realized, wait a minute, you don't have a theme song by any chance, do you? I said, do I ever? Wait till you get a load of this. And it changed everything. If you owned a podcast acquisition station, what would you be able to do if you heard this? Thank you for showing up on Monday night on Brad Stine Has Issues. I'm God's comic Brad Stine, and this is the special podcast where comedy, conservatism, and Christianity collide in a cacophony of clarity. My name, Brad Stine. My moniker, God's comic, given to me by the New Yorker magazine in 2004. The voice behind the voice, the crazy ethereal thing that comes out there and gives the illusion of a banter because he is my sidekick, my son, who was created from whole cloth when he exuded. From my loins is Wyatt Stine. Wyatt, we are back for another Monday. I just don't know how you survive without your dad running the show and you kind of picking up the slack, and you're humble. You don't care that I bring you up, but I do, son, because I love you.
I mean, honestly, I'm not sure what we're doing back here again. I mean, didn't we do this last week?
We did. And you know what happened was I decided, let's just try it next week and the week after and the week after that until people get so tired of it, they either run off and actually make something of themselves or they become brainwashed in this propaganda. And we give them the Kool-Aid we choose because, Wyatt, if we can't build the podcast into a robust information source system, then at least we can create ourselves a nice little cult.
Well, I mean, yeah, but what are the odds of that happening? Like, do you have any idea how many podcasts try and fail? What makes you think all Kool-Aid's gonna be any sweeter?
Stevia.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
I actually tried I don't know if it's stevia, but it's like the plant they make the sweetener out of.
Yeah.
I actually ate one of those leaves, and boy, that definitely could be used to make sweetener if you were that desperate.
Well, speaking of desperate, if you remember last week, we had an amazing guest, Dan French. He is a professor or a doctorate of rhetoric. What you and I are doing right now, our little witty banter, it's rhetoric, but he does it at a professional level, at a doctoral level, which means he not only can speak to you, but then he can give you, some kind of medical attention or chemicals of some kind, because he's a doctor.
I mean, technically, I also am a professional because I also get paid for this.
Yeah, but you're not a doctorate.
Yeah. All I'm saying is the only person within the group who doesn't seem to be a professional is you. Just you.
Well, that's because I don't get paid.
Exactly. And as everybody knows, regardless of your skill level or your accomplishments, you are not a professional until you get that paycheck.
So you're saying that even though I started the podcast, I thought of the podcast, I named the podcast, I do all the content on the podcast, and I'm the face of the podcast because you're the only one that's ever been paid for the podcast. The only professional podcaster here is you.
Yeah, literally. Just because the podcast extruded from your loins, that does not make it your loin boy.
You're my loin boy, though, yeah?
Of course, yeah, but the podcast isn't.
No, well, listen, I got to say this. Dan French is such an interesting guy. Last week we had a great conversation about rhetoric, about talking, about how to try to make your point, how to win a debate, so to speak, by having good points and how to articulate them well and how to just be, just a great communicator. Well, this week is part 2. It was a long interview, and we just said, let's cut it into 2 parts. We'll turn it into a Militia of the Mind Mighty 10,000 telethon as we're getting ready to launch onto the Salem Network. So we need to get as many people jumping in, giving me their emails, giving me their names, giving me their cell numbers, so that I can always get content to you if I'm ever, God forbid, thrown off of Facebook, thrown off of YouTube. And I would only do that if they didn't believe in free speech in America and they believed in Marxist or totalitarian tactics, but that would make them technocrats and oligarchs. And I'm sure they don't want to own up to that. I've made billions of dollars because of America. You'd think they'd love it and allow people of all stripes to speak freely on their platform. Now, I throw that out with the hope that they will engage us in what it means to be an American and allow us to continue. Love to be on your platform, even if you do things I disagree with. That's free speech. So, Wyatt, this is exciting because part 2 with Dan French, we really got in some heated, if you remember, some heated discussions of me feeling a sense of defense of my faith, of my ability to reason, of the conservative values about conserving wisdom, conserving foundational truths and ideas, conserving the idea of looking at what works and what doesn't, getting rid of what's no good and keeping what is good, having an unapologetic view of America as the greatest nation in human history for the most rights, most freedoms, most economic uplift that any nation has ever given any human ever of all stripes and sizes. Perfect country? No. And if you have a perfect country, never had a slave, never had people that were poor, never had people that weren't treated wrongly, never had people that were marginalized, never had people that were murdered, killed, hurt, or harmed. If you have that place where utopia actually exists, everybody just lives on a hammock and eats marshmallows and grapes, tell me about it, I'll move, but it don't exist. And the closest we've ever gotten was the United States. And I'm not ashamed of that, son. I talk about it, I speak it up, because nobody's perfect. No nation can nail it, but we tried to be as good as we could be, and now, because of the left-leaners or Marxists, they're destroying America. They want to destroy it so they can take it over in the sense of telling everybody we're so virtuous, we're so good, nobody else can speak but us because we have the true insight. We're gods. We're godlike men. We will rule because we get to rule because the rest of you just trust us. We will feed you the bugs we want you to eat. We'll give you the vaccines we demand you take. You'll wear the mask we ask. You'll wear what we do. You will not own something. You'll be in a 15-minute city. You will be run by the World Economic Forum. The World Health Organization will decide when you can travel, what you can wear, what you can take. This is what's going on. We will control you. Pure totalitarianism, pure fascism, and yet we're the good ones and the virtuous ones. We never allow you to define us as the very evil that we portray upon you because we're better than you. And we say that by saying we're really not as good as you. It's all a facade. It's all a lie. It's all a big, giant cult, a religious cult. And remember, atheism is the first original religious cult in history. Every human tribe that has ever existed from recorded time believed in God or gods. Of course, the Jews gave us the monotheistic God, which also gave us a prophetic proof that there would be God on earth, a dimensionalized God. We know that God is transcendent. It was Jesus. It was proven in the prophecies. He did miracles that people saw. He died and rose again. That proves that Christianity is, in fact, the truth of all religion in human history, because it's the only one that has verifiable evidence that did what nobody else has ever been able to do. So that's why this matters. I speak of these things not because I'm better. I simply did what you didn't do. I believe the Bible is what it says, a revelation of God to humanity. Here's where you screwed up. Here's how you fix it. And here's what's going on along the way. You don't have to believe it. You don't have to agree with it. You can hate it, despise it. Matter of fact, Jesus said a proof that you don't know him and that you're going to hell is that you will hate his followers. Now, they shouldn't hate you because you're a jerk. They should hate you because you speak truth, and truth is the greatest toxin to people who live in lies that you can actually give. If you believe in any of the things I just talked about, not only are you going to love part 2 with Dan French, but you're going to love being part of this. Militia of the Mind. This is people that are what I call, and the first 10,000 that join will be the mighty 10,000. 10,000 people that give $3 a month, so it's $36 for the whole year. That gives you the ability to access all of my comedy titles, look at them, and read them. You can watch them. If you pay for the extra special forces or for the warriors, then you can download all of my stuff and watch it as much as you want. You can also buy a t-shirt, which I will sign, or if you buy the Special Forces $199, then you will get me signing and numbering your t-shirts, your hats, and your mugs. By the way, we have Special Forces that have joined, and we're going to highlight them. This is a telethon of 2 weeks where we're looking for as many people to join as possible. If you get 7 people, by the way, that you can show me you recommended they joined, and we have their proof that they joined us, even at the smallest levels, I will send you a free signed t-shirt with your number assigned. So if you care about what we're up to, join us please in the mighty 10,000, and we are going to show you me signing the 3 Special Forces who have joined us, and we're going to start with this one. And this was the first because it's all in order, folks. So the first one I'm signed, it looks just like this. So that's me signing it, and it's going out to our first Special Forces, David Mays. You were the first man to join the Special Forces. Now, remember that we've had a bunch of people that have joined over the last few months, and because I was just a one-man show with my son, and little by little it's growing, I didn't have the ability to go find who did what and who ordered what, but we're getting it now. All of your merchandise is in, by the way, Special Forces guys. It's all going to be shipped to you. I'd love you then to put on your shirt, your hats, take a picture, send it to us, and we will put you up on our podcast. Also, here is me signing another Special Forces swag bag. Wyatt, let's see this in action. There you have it. You can be just as famous as Thomas Pastore, the number 2 Special Forces. Him and David Mays are going to work, fighting the good fight and defending freedom. But you're probably thinking, wait, who's got their back? If they're shooting there and he's shooting there, somebody needs to get their 6. Well, he happens to be right here. And who is our 3rd Special Forces, Wyatt? Guess who our 3rd Special Forces is?
Steve?
No, I'm not going to tell you his first initial is Michael, and his last name is Quacken, but that's all I'm going to tell you for right now.
Heavy Tootle.
No, Bushquacker, Michael Quackenbush.
Oh, that was my next guess.
Michael Quackenbush joined the Special Forces. He said, Karen Boyd, Nick Kress always beat me online. Ashley Haas shows up here. Paula Faye Marie Rouchy has 4 names. Forrest Bainey has the best name. Stan Stinson's everywhere we need. Benjamin Gregory shows up every now and again. Danny Herring fights off Trudeau and jumps in from Canada. He said, what can I do? And then he realized, I know what I can do. I can join the Special Forces because that's one thing none of them have done. And he's right. So we need all of you Special Forces guys. When you get your shirts, your hats, put them on, take a picture, and email them, and we're going to put you up on our podcast and show you to the whole wide world. We want you to be excited. We want you to go find me 7 each. 7 people that you'll say, will you join up? Tell them about the podcast. We're still growing it. Yeah, we're going to be on Salem, but people still have to watch it. They still have to decide they like it. They still have to get behind it. And so the more that we can generate income to build a better podcast, interesting guests, more fun things to do while informing you and fighting the good fight and encouraging you to be part of us, the better shot we will have of being able to build that Salem audience into thousands and thousands until eventually I won't be able to find any of you people because the thread will be too gigantic. Wyatt, it won't be called a thread then, it'll be called a rope.
Are you expecting me to respond to that? I mean, yes, that is... Although I think technically it goes thread and then cable into rope if you mix them about. I work at Lowe's, so I should know this stuff.
Really? Cable is stronger than rope.
No. You're thinking of metal cable versus, like, twine rope. Technically, anything can be a cable if you just twist it hard enough.
What do you mean by that? What do you mean you can just twist something and it becomes a cable?
That's literally what a cable is. It's you take a bunch of wires and you twist them up until they form sort of a... Yeah, that's what a cable is.
Well, then how can twine be called a cable if it's not wire?
Technically, the only difference between a cable and a rope is the material you use to make it, not necessarily what it is. It's both just a really big thing made from twisting a bunch of small things that makes it stronger.
You're saying to me that if I took 5 3-foot-long pieces of twine and wrapped them all together, that would be called a cable of twine?
Either a cable or a rope of twine. It'd be a pathetic one, but it would technically count. Like, have you seen those, like, how-to videos and how they make rope? It's like tens of thousands of strands to create cables, and then, like, 6 of those cables twisted around themselves to make a rope.
Really?
Yes, we watched how it's made. We know it. We've seen that before.
I just thought cable referenced metal.
It's the most common place that you see it, but I'm pretty sure a cable is just the intermediate stage between twine and rope. Though I can, honestly, no, I don't want to be ignorant. I'll look it up. And if I am wrong, mock me profusely.
Since when did you not want to be ignorant?
But now.
So, folks, I got to tell you something. While Wyatt is looking up his foray into the cable definition world that so few of us venture into because it's so frightening.
Okay, here it is. The term cable is often used interchangeably with wire rope. However, in general, wire rope refers to diameters larger than 3/8 inch, and smaller sizes are designated as cable or cords.
Wire rope, Wyatt. Wire rope is a cable, not...
No, wire rope is a cable when it's big enough. If it's too small, it's a cable or a cord.
Yes, but...
And I'm going to pretend that was my argument because I've honestly forgotten it right now.
Oh, yeah.
I honestly forgot what I was trying to say. But yeah, it's interesting.
Well, listen, folks, here's what you need to know. We're about to speak with Dan French into part 2 of rhetoric and how to speak and think and try to overcome your insecurities, being able to defend your point of view. But this one got a little bit more heated and this doctorate of rhetoric, and he was a great guy. I'd love to talk to him again. I'd love to have him back on, and he invited me to be on his podcast. But, you know, I like to stand for things. I'm not a pushover. I'm not going to be pushed around. I'm used to, as a comic and as a believer in free speech, speaking my mind, standing for it, trying to defend it, because any belief system that cannot withstand intellectual scrutiny should be abandoned. Every conversation you have that has any purpose should let you leave that conversation with one of 2 perspectives. Either A, you are more deeply committed to what you believe because it feels much more secure in your mind and in your psyche, or you need to re-question it or perhaps abandon it if it can no longer withstand scrutiny or has such flaws by which you should at least no longer put all of your weight upon it. So either one of those things means you had a wonderful, compelling, important dialogue, and that's an important thing. And right now, as Wyatt does research, I need to let you know that yeah, in part of Wyatt's room that he stays, it's a little cooler. It doesn't have it. It's not connected to the home, and so we have a little space heater that he uses. And for a couple weeks, it was very cold, and he just said, "I don't understand because it doesn't have buttons, so I just don't know how to work it. Does it come with some kind of instruction manual?" And I looked at it, and I saw just one little button, just one. It was the only one that was there, and I touched it, and everything turned on, and it began to generate heat. And that's when I realized that my son is what they used to call idiot savant. He's a great drummer. He's a marginal producer. He's a wonderful sidekick. He's clever and kind of humorous. He's smart, and he does have some wisdom and some great technical acumen in certain areas of the world. But when it comes to what we used to call common sense, he has neither. Now, this is the same being that exuded from my loins, and yet he lacked the depth, the insight, the wisdom, and may I say brilliance of his old man or his father or his papa.
Okay, look, just because I don't have the doctorate of a guest does not mean I am dumb. I am, but it's not because of that. Also, I looked it up. Wire rope, definitely a thing. It's just another way of saying, like, a cable. Or wire. So wire rope does exist.
Yes.
Yeah. You're wrong, whatever your argument was. And I'm right, whatever my argument was. The point is, this definitely led to a good conclusion, I think.
No, what I said was rope isn't metal.
Yeah, it is. It is, though. Literally, wire rope is a thing.
Oh.
Yeah, rope is not... rope literally is just another way of saying cable or something like that. It's interchangeably used, but it is associated with...
No.
Yeah.
Now I see where, and this is where rhetoric comes in, we got some miscommunication. You were saying that rope, I thought, normal rope that's hemp or whatever the heck rope's made out of.
Yeah, twine or something.
Twine is called cable. And then when I said, well, wait a minute, I thought cable was metal. And then when we found out that cable is made of wire rope, you are now telling me, well, you can call metal rope, which is true, and that's a good piece of information. But you can't call rope metal because regular rope isn't. That's all I was saying.
Okay, so you're saying that I can call a metal cable a rope, but I can't call a hemp rope a cable.
Yeah, because it's not metal.
All right, let me look it up then.
You know, what is it with this what is he, a millennial, that they got to look everything up, and this presumes that everything they look up is legit, accurate, conforms to reality. So, son, when are people like you, your age group, you're 27, just educate yourself enough to not have to look every stinking thing up? Why don't you just...
Look, I have the art of human knowledge at the palm of my hand. I'm going to be one of the few people left on this planet who actually uses it.
Listen, folks, this is the hat of the Mighty 10,000. This is the Mighty 10,000 Militia of the Mind shirt. That is, by the way, it is expensive. It's like $50 because it's an athletic shirt. It dries out real good and you sweat on it. Right here it says Mighty 10,000, and this is where, actually we're going to move it up to here now, but I learned that after this. This is where I sign my name and I number what number you are in the militia of the Mind in the Mighty 10,000. So last week we saw Nick Kress was number one. He got number one. McCarran Boy got number two. The rest of it is up for grabs, and that's really up to the people that either buy the shirt and then you'll get your number, or join the special forces and then you get it for free. But lots of other things too. All of our guests, by the way, had special magic questions, bonus questions that can only be seen on the other side of the $3, the $3 a month. So, I tried to give as much to the smaller, most economical join, because what I really want is just have you guys access to your emails and who you are, so with that we can always communicate if something ever goes haywire. So I made it as cheap as I could. $3 a month is ridiculous, but it allows us to communicate. But it does allow you to get the bonus question. Some people say, save that for the people that pay. No. I wanted you guys to get some value because I appreciate you jumping and being part of the Mighty 10,000. And as I said last week, if you find 7 people that you get to join, and it's just $36,000. By the way, maybe you want, remember, this is my ministry. It is. It's serving God, telling his story, and it is part of a ministry. And so it is a 501c3. It's because it's not making money off of what I am talking about when it comes to God and his ideas and thoughts. It's simply a way that we can help people, and I can generate ways to help people. I go into some churches when I perform at a very low cut rate. Not everybody can afford things, but I want to help people. But I can only do that by people helping to participate in this. And so if you get 7 people on board, then I will send you your numbered, signed, autographed Militia of the Mind special shirt, because you're helping us grow. And once we get on, let's see, it should be, well, this is March 4th. So it should be this month soon that we will be landing on the podcast for Salem, and all the back catalog stuff will be there. But you can also find all the back catalog on my Facebook page, on my YouTube page, Stine Has Issues, or on Spotify or on Apple. All of my stuff is there. Wyatt is learning to do the editing, and as you guys know, when he first started, he sucked at everything, and now he just sucks at a couple things, but he's learned to also do some things pretty good. Wyatt, what do you suck out the most now?
That's a good, probably answering to your questions in a reasonable hour.
Yeah, that's probably true.
Yeah, I mean, I gotta reach all the way over to the soundboard to unmute myself, because otherwise you hear more of me, which nobody wants.
Why, do you know that you insisted on a board that had special effects sounds, like a Foley board, for Foley artists who make the sounds?
Yeah.
And yet you never use it, son. You never use it. And the only time it's ever been used in process, in the actual podcast, was when we had somebody filling in for you a few weeks ago when Ashley Haas was here, and you showed up in a very anthropomorphic, almost unnoticeable way.
I don't think you can really call it anthropomorphic if the only difference was the cat head. Anthropomorphic means you give human characteristics to an animal, not necessarily put a fake head on and call it a day. That's a Halloween costume at best.
Yeah, but being as we have a rhetorician on, don't you
think? Nope, you're wrong. Nope. Hear that? That's you.
You so desperately wanted to finally use a button because somebody beat you.
I need to introduce a button.
And you should have been using it all along. I paid good money for that button that you find so difficult to utilize.
I mean, I literally have written down what all them do because I wanted to use it more, and I just don't.
Idiot savant. And Wyatt, idiot savants are geniuses. Their savant means genius. Idiot means not so much.
So I'm average.
Yeah. Not me. Not me, though.
Yeah, but at least I get paid for being average. You don't get paid for being exceptional.
Ooh, but at least I'm exceptional. Oh, you got paid to say that.
You win this round.
I felt like I was the king for a day.
Well, yeah, I thought you were the king for about 12 seconds.
I need to know, before we move to our guest, Dan French, in part 2 of this amazing episode. And folks, I know you like me to come on and say hi to you guys and greet you, and I love doing that, and I'll always do that. But once in a while, when we have special episodes like these these last 2 weeks while I was performing in Pennsylvania, I didn't make it a telethon to build our viewership and to get it out into the marketplace where we get more people joining our mighty 10,000. So I do need to ask you before we move on, Are there any Lowe's stories that we can say? Because here's the thing, folks. Lowe's has taken a beating with Wyatt's stories, but it's been so fun and so funny, and they're good sports about that, and they don't mind a good saw joke or a good ratchet laugh every now and again, because that's what they're all. They're a home goods store. But the truth is that as we're moving into the big leagues, as we're getting into Salem, and hopefully that will grow and grow and grow until we get onto their outside or their just faith-based platform, we get into the mainstream platform where Dennis Prager hangs out and Charlie Kirk and Eric Metaxas. If we get into that world, then, you know, Wyatt will be full-time. And it is my hope that he can be full-time sidekick, full-time producer, full-time editor, learn all these skills. And then one day he can laugh at all you guys and say, see, you didn't believe in me. You always laughed and mocked and felt so sorry. And now look at me. I'm the head of this big, giant, huge platform of podcasts with my dad, and it had nothing to do with nepotism. It's because I had such promise. It wasn't because I was his son. It was
yeah. Mm-hmm. Keep going.
Throw a bone. It wasn't because he just felt sorry for me and felt like it would keep me out.
I mean, listen. I've seen your computer work. You needed all the help you got. In fact, you probably need more. Still.
I don't care that I'm not a tech god like you children are, because you guys are stuck to that thing like you're robots. You don't understand how much you're controlled by technology and how much you can't do. You understand that if you were out lost somewhere and your cell phone died without GPS and a map was sitting right next to you, you wouldn't know what to do with it. I, on the other hand, could navigate wherever I needed to go. Plus, I could put a stick in the dirt and figure out which way is north. Wyatt, you guys won't survive without the boomers. We were the last generation that knew how to take care of business no matter what hell came our way.
You were also the last generation to get wandered in the woods randomly with no way out. So, you know.
What do you mean wandering in the woods?
Yeah, your whole argument that you're the last generation that could survive being stranded in the woods is defeated by the fact that you're also the last generation who got lost in the woods on a regular basis.
Is that because of the maps?
Yeah, and the whole stick thing. I mean, it's a cool party trick, but like in an actual wilderness survival situation, you're better off just, you know, following a stream till you reach civilization.
Dang Boy Scouts, stick in the dirt shadow to find which way to go. Formula.
Yep. That's not the only part you got wrong, but, you know, we're almost out of time, and honestly, I need some more time to think of other things you got wrong with that, so, you know.
Listen, you were not a Boy Scout, you were a Cub Scout.
Yeah, same thing, more or less, despite sounding different.
I was a Boy Scout, and I got to tell you, I learned this. A Boy Scout is trustworthy, loyal, helpful, friendly, courteous, kind, obedient, cheerful, thrifty, brave, clean, and reverent. That's what I learned to become part of a Boy Scout. You had to memorize it, and I can't believe it's still stuck deep into my head, but yet all of those are virtues.
Despite all of that, you still never graduated to Man Scout.
I did. It's called being a father and making a fellow human who doesn't appreciate his lot in life, but in fact mocks and ridicules his old man, and not realizing that you exist.
Ah, yes, one of the hardest merit badges to get.
It's not easy, I will be honest.
I mean, what if you had a son, became a father, but that son loved and appreciated all your work? Well, there goes the merit badge. Try again.
Oh, that's a good point. Well, I do appreciate, son, that you've been with me on this ride, and together we built this crazy little machine, and now we're going to be on sale, and who knows where it's going to go. We don't know. I don't know how. As you know, I have a heart condition, so I could keel over at any time. If it ever happens, I will expect you to edit it and at least make me look not crazy.
No, look, I'm just going to say this. Ignore that first one.
Listen, if I collapse and die and you go, wah, wah, I mean, that'd be funny. It deserves, I'm a comic. It's okay. Listen, you can laugh and joke, son, all you want, because as long as you come find me in heaven one day, I'm good. Speaking of good, we are at the time of the show where if you haven't joined by now or gotten people to join, there's not much more I can do. I'm begging you. I'm pleading with you. Join the mighty 10,000 Militia of the Mind. We need you. And then get some swag along the way. But for right now, as we finish up this telethon, you've got to see over the last 2 weeks who number 1 and number 2 was when it came to the mighty 10,000. You got to see who the 3 Special Forces joiners are. And lots of more of you are out there. It's just a matter of if you want to go ahead and jump in and get the T-shirt. And that T-shirt then will allow me to sign it for you. But it also allows us to add to the production of the podcast and help it to grow. Last week we had Professor Dr. Dan French. We talked about how to communicate. This is part 2. It was long, so we split it into 2 parts. Perfect bookend for me. I will see you live next week. But this is the one where we continued on, but I started sort of talking to him. I think when he talked about, I remember it was, I talked about leftism and its bigotry, and he was confused by that, as all leftists are. They didn't realize that they're bigots. They don't realize that they are systemically narcissistic, in that whenever you speak or see or hear of a left-leaner who's really committed to that ideology, whatever they accuse their enemies of is exactly what they're doing. They are intolerant by calling you intolerant. They are bigoted by calling you a bigot. They are racist by calling you a racist. They are dogmatic by calling you dogmatic. They are closed-minded by calling you closed-minded. They literally tell you who they are, and the most important thing is they don't know it. They literally are not self-reflective enough to understand maybe, just maybe, it's you. You're the one that disinvites people from speaking in college campuses. The left only does that, not the right. You're the one that doesn't allow conservatives to teach. Only your point of view is allowed to be spoken of. Why? Because it's so weak, cancerous, and death that you don't want anybody to have to scrutinize it, because when you smell a rotten corpse, you want it out of the way as quickly as possible. I despise leftist, Marxist, evil, cancerous death cult known as Marxism, and it's all inculcated into the very fabric and DNA of critical theory, and it became critical race theory and everything else that has been used instead of to find a uniting force, or the lie they tell themselves that it just makes people sensitive to racism. People have been sensitive to racism from the get-go, but when you start making it part of the very nature of a human being, that because I have this color melanin, I can't not be a racist. When you give me that kind of cancerous, demonic crap, I'm not playing. You don't get to be a racist to me and pretend like you're the virtuous one. Anybody that's a racist deserves to be called out. Anybody that's evil deserves to be called out. Anybody that lives by lies needs to be exposed by shining the light of truth. I'm a Christ follower. I'm beholden to the truth. Jesus was truth. He's the only way to God. That's how the game works. If you believe in that kind of rhetoric, that kind of ability to get your point across, you're going to learn something as we move into phase 2 with this interview with Dan French and God's comic Brad Stine. This one you're going to really like. Hang on. So what I'm curious about to you is, as we move forward into this season, of a new president or being elected, and we are at the most, I don't know if I've ever seen a more polarized America, where people are literally moving away to particular parts of this nation that represents their point of view, and others, almost like a civil war is brewing. You know, give us some techniques, some optimism, some hope, if it exists, as a rhetorician. You know, how can we talk and communicate with those, especially that we're going to disagree with in our political point of view? That's healthy. That's helpful. Is it possible? And if so, show us how to do that. What would be your recommendations?
Yeah, I think that was a nice run you did there. You went through a lot of different cultural areas and societal areas. Very interesting to hear you do that, and like getting to the point of what can rhetoric do, and how can this get us to a point where our culture's more stable, it's safer, it's moving forward, people feel good about the country across the board, right? And I think that is some things that rhetoric is supposed to do. And politicians, presidents are supposed to be able to make the entire country feel good about where the country is going. That's one of their jobs. How do you get to that stage where when you heard FDR talk after Pearl Harbor, nobody was heckling him. You know, there was no, this guy's too soft on Japan,
Right.
or warmonger. You know, it came later, but in that moment when the president steps up there, their entire job is to make all the millions of people who are inside this country feel good about being part of this country. And that's one of the major functions of political rhetoric. And you see it a lot, especially on ceremonies. It's called epidictic rhetoric, where the ceremony is there and the president or the official is supposed to come forth and talk about what's great about the country, great about the moment, great about the people. 4th of July, Martin Luther King Day, all these days are built around epidictic, celebrational rhetoric. You know, it's there to make us praise ourselves for what we've done and where we're going. And when it's done right, you know, it makes the people feel really good. And that's one of the positive functions of rhetoric. So, but it's also because we're in a two-party system and we're in a multi-party democracies, it doesn't matter. You're in conflict. So if there's somebody that steps up there and makes everybody feel good about the culture and society and who they are and what their opportunities are, that works against you as far as getting power. So you either need to step up next to them and present a better vision, or you need to attack their vision. Those are your kind of rhetorical options. Either go on the attack and tear theirs down, or go on and amplify yours. And when you start to attack, it gets into real problems for the culture, because now suddenly no group feels good about everything. We feel those divisions. We feel them deeply. And we're like, I don't like the leftists. I don't like the rightists. I don't like Christians. I don't like Muslims. I don't like atheists. And the politicians stoke those. They feed those feelings because they know that gets people more adhered to their perspective, because you're feeling this outrage towards the other side. And we have just a ton of negativized rhetoric right now because it's very effective. It plays well in the media. I mean, Trump is a master of conflict. He's master at punching back when people punch at him. He's a master at punching people before they punch him. He has been in reality shows which are based on conflict. He was in New York, which is a conflict city. He was a promoter in real estate, which is a conflict process. He is a conflict artist. And it plays very, very well in the media. It's one of the reasons why people have such difficulty challenging him, is because of his rhetorical tactics play very, very well in the modern media landscape and the modern political landscape. But for the people beneath it, it is completely fracturing. To constantly feel outrage, to constantly feel like they're these villains who have way too much power. And it's on both sides. Everybody feels outrage, which is not a positive emotion for a country to feel.
When they talk about Trump derangement syndrome, do you think that those who are clearly over the top hatred of him, I don't care if you don't want to vote for him or you disagree with his policies, that's what freedom is. I truly don't care. But when you just become almost cult-like, and that's what they call those who voted for Trump, your MAGA cult, it's like cult. I mean, you're saying this guy never did one good thing for this nation. He didn't shut down our ability to give ourselves power and gas, and so we could protect ourselves in certain things that he did. He did he's now been nominated for a Nobel Prize for the Middle East treaties, but he didn't do anything good. So again, you don't have to agree with him, but to act like this guy is Hitler is so hyperbolically rhetoric. It's ridiculous. It's stupid. You've destroyed the power of words by making them meaningless. Use them properly. That's what I've always said to comics when I was in the clubs, and I never cursed, I just was clean. And a guy, it's funny because they would come up to me after, we'd be in the condos or whatever and talk afterwards. And because I'm clean, oftentimes guys, now this is back in 90s, early 100s, because I don't do much clubs anymore. So hardly anybody doesn't curse, but guys would come up to me and they go, I've been thinking about cleaning up my act. And I was the headliner, so I guess I could have said, I don't want you to do that bit, or, we kind of have that gentleman's agreement that the headliner gets to kind of define how the game works. But I never did that. I felt like if I'm the closer, I should be able to follow whatever they have. But I never said don't curse. That's your job. That's your business. You do your thing. I'm doing mine. And they would say, gee, I've been thinking about cleaning up and I'm going, why are they doing that? Well, the only conclusion I could have as a comic, and you will get this, is because we all know it's harder to be clean than dirty. It just is. It's harder to write clean because you have to use pure words and images and parallels and allegories and metaphors. And that's the fun of the art of stand-up comedy, is you use rhetoric to paint pictures. And the more you limit yourself by not using swearing or scatological terms or whatnot, the more you I don't think, hinder yourself, but in fact, demand a more robust creativity that has to emerge, because you don't have access to the F word, which is going to give you the power that I have to find another place because I don't get to use the word by self-imposement. And of course, the proof of that is in Brian Regan or a Jim Gaffigan or those who are, or Seinfeld, who are clean and said, let me show you how to use words and the way I deliver this. That is going to, by far, be a much more intriguing long-term legs than the F word, in my opinion. But I want to get back to Trump because he's more likely going to be the Republican nominee. A lot of people who described why they didn't like him was his, I don't know, crass means of communicating, calling people names, giving them nicknames. No president had ever really done that. So they're just like, come on, man, you can't just act like you're a dock worker and call
Right.
fat this and blah, blah, but suddenly be the president. I mean, I don't like that he insults. They're just dumb. I think he shoots himself in the foot half the time, because I did like his courage to stand up against political correctness and not fall for their, you're offensive, so I'm supposed to bow the knee. I'm not apologizing for something I believe in. So tell me about him. Let's just deal with that, because it's something that everybody's going to certainly be talking about. Do you feel like, you said he's great at conflict. Do you think he's a good rhetorician? Is he a good communicator? He just uses some techniques that are maybe a little bit more crude or crass to make his point, and that just kind of rubs people the wrong way? Or do you think there's some method in his madness when he starts kind of provoking people based on like insults and so forth?
Yeah, he's a phenomenon all his own. There will never be another Trump.
Yeah.
He came out of nowhere for politics, but we already knew him for 4 decades.
Yeah.
He was already famous, but he was kind of a clown. That was one of his original things. Like, he was in a lot of comedies. People made a lot of jokes about him because of his comb overs and things like that, and his over promotion of himself. But he was also, in the media for being rich. So he already had that character. And then he ended up on The Apprentice, where they portrayed him as a super businessman. So he got that sort of exposure, and that was a reality show. So all the reality show things of, again, conflict. So he was super famous before he got into politics. He was also super trained. He stays on script better than anyone I've ever seen. So you talk about like him insulting people. They're pretty soft insults compared to what a real insult comic would do.
Right.
Right.
And
but again, it's not something that was ever in politics before. And so he imported a lot of entertainment technique into politics. And I think that's one of the reasons it blew it so wide open. Most politicians were boring and still are boring. Like when they used to run the State of the Union, when there's only 3 networks, everybody would be upset because there's nothing to watch, and they would turn it off. There'd be the night where they didn't watch TV. But entertainment has now invaded politics because news organizations have become much more entertainment themed and use entertainment techniques. So they're looking for a super conflict. They're looking for big characters. They're looking for crazy things that happened that day. And Trump knows how to play all of that. So the imposition, the invasion of entertainment techniques into politics is one of the things that's super new. That's never been a part of American politics. It's also one of the reasons, again, why we feel so much outrage, because entertainment is about intense emotions. You don't watch a horror movie because it's mild. You don't watch, some type of action movie because it has weak stunts. Everything is amplified, super extreme. And again, Trump has imported that over into politics. I don't think it's healthy for the country to constantly be pinged like that into these outrage emotions and these super intense emotions. So like I think you do this like you just did, like, hey, just pull back. Don't be so extreme. Like you sound dumb when you say Trump had no positives for this culture, for this country. But everybody's like, well, his negatives were so intense. Like he's so horrible. And it's like they can't get into that sort of middle, less emotion space where they can think reasonably or rationally. And so entertainment mixed with politics is a really difficult public discourse. Yeah. It's hard on people.
Yeah. Well, let me ask you this. As you said, I'm a Christian conservative. I'm not a Republican, just so you know, not that it matters, but I'm just giving you full disclosure. I believe they're despicable, the Republicans. Their job was to check and balance what I thought was incredibly unconstitutional elements from the left, and they did nothing. So to me, I find them more despicable than the left, because I'd rather know who I'm fighting and know what you are. At least I get it. Here's what we stand for. Come after us. Yeah, but don't say you're on my side and then I vote for you and you represent my sacred vote and then you betray me. That's Judas. He's worse than a demon to me. But anyways, but I'm curious about this, and I have some method to my madness. I don't know if you're a Democrat or if you would you consider yourself a left-leaning. Why don't you tell me? Like, and there's a reason for this. It's not a gotcha. I want to. There's something I'm curious about, and one of the things that I'm very important about in my podcast is having people with different points of view being able to get along and just discuss. Sure. So if you don't mind, could you kind of give me your worldview? Or would you consider yourself a left-leaner, right-leaner, moderate, Democrat? I'm just curious, and then you'll know why in a second.
I'm not really good with those labels.
Okay.
I'm an intellectualist.
A what?
So I tend to. What's that? Sorry, go ahead. I lost you there for a second.
And like I said, it's not. I'm not here to. It's not a gotcha. I promise. But but you'll understand why. But I'm just curious. So give me an idea of your world, your presuppositional worldview. How would you, philosophically or culturally, politically, where would you land?
So I'm working class, grew up working class in Kentucky. So very familiar with working class principles of community and honesty and, not trusting the wealthy, not trusting power structures. I grew up very Christian, so I'm very comfortable with those areas. But I'm also, a hyper-educated person. I stayed in schools because they basically took me out of a working class neighborhood in Kentucky and, sort of raised me up from the working class into the middle class. And so I'm also comfortable with that. I'm not a Marxist because I'm not sure that applies anymore, but I'm an intellectualist. So I like really smart people. And I like the idea that really smart people are running the country. I also like the idea that really moral people will be running the country. And so I would say I'm a humanist. Like, I'm not particularly religious anymore. I read a lot of religion, and again, it's fine. It is what it is. I'm just not a supernaturalist. Like, I think there's plenty to figure out all by ourselves right here on the planet. You know, how do we get along? How do we talk to each other? How do we run a society? And so I'm also a comedian, so I like a wide open culture and wide open society. I don't care whether somebody is profane or obscene. Like, I write clean comedy. But I can, and I enjoy like really dark, hardcore comedy too. You know, it's just part of, one of those things that you, as a comedian, I think you don't have a moral conscience. You have a comedy conscience.
Yeah.
Is this funny? I don't care what you're saying.
Right.
And if you've ever been in a comedy writer's room, like on a TV show, like on a talk show, it's often who can say the worst possible thing in the most artistic, clever way.
Of course.
It's comedy.
Of course. And, like I said, I mean, as a conservative Christian, I still was amongst comics, for most of my career, and artists. I'm an actor, so I've been in numerous movies and this. So I'm around the artist community, musicians. So I don't care what you believe, and I don't care how you speak, and nobody has to clean up their language around me or whatever. That doesn't affect me. I know who I am. I know what I believe. I know what is true. So I just love artists. I love people that are creative and think creatively. I love that, and I'm inspired by that. So it kind of breaks my heart that so many leftist artists are left, not because they're left, but because the leftism has taught them to be hateful and bigoted towards me and people like me. And it's like, I don't get it. I'm
now I have a question, like the bigoted thing. So because I hear that a lot, and sort of one of the things that's happened again with rhetoric these days is that it's gotten off its moorings. Yeah. Like, this side now accuses this side of the thing that this side used to accuse this side of.
Yeah.
Right? So the right now accuses the left of being bigoted.
Yeah.
And so the left would probably say, well, the right was the original bigots. That's why we were going after them, because they didn't like black people. They didn't like immigrants. They didn't like all these different cultures. And so where does it begin? Like, you're talking about trying to hold terms down. And bigot is a really interesting one. I mean, I grew up in Louisville, which is a very segregated city. It had the East End rich whites, the South End where I grew up poor whites, and then the West End with the blacks. And it was a very segregated city. And then it started to, sort of integrate. You started to get a lot of immigration in, and it just sort of blew the place up. But there was a lot of racial tension. I never particularly felt it because, again, I was sort of inculcated with poor whites. And it wasn't even a factor in our life. There was 2 black guys went to my high school because my high school coach went down and recruited them from the West End to play football for us. And so I became friends with them. But that was my only exposure to another race growing up. But I didn't harbor a lot of bigoted feelings because it wasn't a rhetoric that I was exposed to. It wasn't part of my life.
Yeah.
So talk about that. Like, why do you say the left is bigoted? Because I think the left would say, no, we're reacting against the bigoted people.
Well, there's a million lanes I could jump
right
in. Let's start with that final phrase. We're reacting to the bigoted people. So are you presuming then that bigotry is wrong? It sure is. The definition of bigoted, I'm paraphrasing, is an absolute intolerance to other people's point of view or view. You understand that? Yes, I do. And it's immoral, right? Yes, it is. So the fact that you are completely and utterly intolerant of my point of view makes you a bigot unless you don't believe in words. So which is it? Bigotry is wrong or just mine? And that's...
So if you're a bigot,
and so are you,
can I be bigoted against you?
By definition, what does that mean? Then the word doesn't matter. The word isn't real. How can the word apply to one?
Take the word out there and say.
How can the word apply to one free agent, autonomous human being with a conscience and the ability to choose a perspective, and not apply to another one who has a diametrically opposed worldview? It's all people trying to objectively observe the world the best they can and draw conclusions. Some of those conclusions can be racist. Some of those conclusions can be evil, like Nazis towards Jews, or like Muslims towards Christians, where where genocide is taking place in killing my people as we speak in Nigeria. So to me, when critical law theory, which morphed into critical race theory, created this caveat: you can't be a racist unless you're in power. Well, first off, I don't believe in race. I believe in ethnicities. But wait a minute. So you're telling me that if you preface a term with the word white, which isn't a mind, which isn't a thought, which isn't rhetoric, which isn't volition, which isn't agency, which isn't concepts or philosophies, it's a color, and you give it some kind of mind power and behavioral structure, it's not even true. It doesn't even comport to how we actually behave as humans. My behavior, my choices, my thoughts, my mind is who I am. This is just how I exist. It's melanin. It means nothing. So when I'm hearing somebody that's prefacing me with those whiteness, that's bigoted. It's absurd. But I can't be that because somebody was bigoted to me once. So you are telling me bigotry is wrong unless it comes from you. Then somehow it becomes virtuous because you simply get to use it against those who oppressed you. Either it's wrong or it's not. If it's wrong, you don't get access to it either, unless you don't believe in truth. And you think hypocrisy is okay as long as you get power. That's bigotry. And it's so obvious and so clearly happening as we speak. DEI DEI is literally choosing people based on their gender or their color. That's racist and that is bigoted, period, or the word doesn't work. And that's why we call it bigotry when you choose a point of view or a color and disparage it and blanket statement its moral infrastructure, and yet somehow claim that you are not beholden to the same perspective and ideology that you're now suddenly placing on somebody else. Now, that's just what truth feels like when somebody finally has to deal with it from their perspective, and they're not used to that because they've been told you're off the hook. You can do whatever you want, and you'll never be held accountable because you're a victim. That's a lie, and I don't deal with lies.
Awesome run of rhetoric. Awesome run of rhetoric. Do you want to play rhetoric with it?
Yeah.
Okay. So let's go back to the original statement. The word bigot is a problem, right?
Well, it's not a problem. No, bigot isn't a problem. It's a word, and it's an important word.
It's problematic because you're saying that it's not fully defined.
The dictionary definition is an intolerance to a point of view or perspective or a particular personality trait by which someone has can't change. It's immutable. And to be intolerant and unbending towards giving them equal access to dignity. That's kind of the definition of bigot. So that's.
I'm not sure that's the definition of bigot.
What do you consider it? I mean, I went by the dictionary, but I mean, what am I missing?
Well, the dictionary is just again, like if you start really opening things up, the dictionary is a political tool too, right? It's been agreed upon by mostly, males, power structures. These words get in there and they control the words.
Well, wait a minute. When you say that, so that sneaks in the presumption that something's inherently wrong with male. What does that?
No, okay. So, like I said, let's play rhetoric with it. So let's stay with.
Well, I'm playing rhetoric with you, but I've heard.
Oh, you are. You're doing great. Like I said, you're very well.
I'm not going. You're not going to play. You're not going to fool me. I promise you that on your rhetoric.
Well, that's not. Again, like I'm an ethical rhetorician, so I'm never out to fool people.
Okay.
I'm just the opposite. We are here to try to get clarity.
No, that's great. Go ahead.
You use the word truth, I use the word clarity. And so to me, like, again, one of the reasons why people shy away from learning rhetoric and really getting trained in it is because it's grind. It is a lot of work to define words and hold them to something and then use them in a context where other words are swirling around. You went through a ton of words in that perspective on what bigoted is. So if we start with bigot, I think the word itself contains a history. Like somebody who's a bigot, typically, like Archie Bunker was a bigot, right? That's one of the things that you hear culturally. Like he was a semi-lovable bigot, which is a very interesting character for comedy and TV. So it's a racial foundation in bigotry. It's not ideological. It's not perspective. It's not even gender. Like a bigot, traditionally, that word comes from white prejudging black. That is the history of bigot. Now
I don't know the etymology of the word bigot. I guess that would be the most important thing, is to deep dive into where that actually came from. I can't presume that the word bigot is some modern invention, since people have been bigoted towards each other from the beginning.
Well, we've been like humans, everything on Earth prejudges everything else on Earth. That is a survival mechanism. Like when you see something, you make quick assumptions about it, quick evaluations. Is it safe, dangerous? What's this thing going to do? What's it not going to do? Prejudgment is a survival tool across all species. Bigotry is a subset of prejudgment. So if we're doing our definitions thing, it's natural, it's needed. You have to be able to judge things at speed about whether they're safe or not in order to survive on this planet. So you're not going to get rid of that. When you start talking about human beings and you're like, okay, great, we understand that is a tool that we have to use. It's part of us. We're not getting rid of it. When it goes wrong is when we get into trouble. And I think you're right. I think any kind of prejudgment about race or gender or sexuality or any of that stuff is negative prejudgment. It's flawed. Because you don't know whether that person fits those big demographics or not. Mm-hmm. And that's what you want to know. Right? When you're talking to somebody, it's like, okay, is this person open to discussion? Are they crazy? Are they dangerous? Are they, bigoted? What are they? So you can have some sense of how to, interact with them. Mm. But the word bigot itself, because it gets slippery, and changes, all words are malleable, they can always be changed, it becomes a problem for us in dialogue. And I think one of the things rhetoric tries to offer the world is, let's slow down a little bit, see if we can hold on to these terms a little more closely so that we avoid some of this, what you said earlier, non-conflict conflict. We actually agree with each other. Yeah. I totally agree with you that nobody should look at you and say, conservative Christian, ergo, I know what that person is. Right. Because there's a huge range of conservative Christianity. Huge range. Like I grew up Catholic and Southern Baptist. My grandparents were Southern Baptist. And I went to church with the Southern Baptists. Same God, same Christianity, very different flavor, And so there's complexity in it. So don't speed through it and make these big assumptions and these big, villainizing of something before you gather some more of the deep information about this person. Totally agree with that.
Yeah. Well, and I think, though, what you said about, the potential slippery slope or the malleability of a word is true. We've already discussed that it's manipulated and sometimes done, with volition. You chose to manipulate what you meant by the word so you could accomplish something. So what I guess what I would say to you pragmatically is, if I said to someone, hey, I'm looking for somebody to help me in my business, but I don't like black people, so I'm not going to hire you if you're black because I just think you're bad people. How would they feel if I said that to the guy? He'd say, I feel hurt. I'd feel judged. I'd feel unfairly defined without knowing me. And I would say to them, you deserve to feel those things because all that would be true. And then I would have to ask, but why does that matter? So what if you feel that? Should I care about that? Why should I give a crap about you? And they'd say, if they go by the Western Judeo-Christian worldview that all of us are steeped in, whether you realize it or not, because you're made in the image of God. Thus, you have dignity just because you exist. That's why we got the idea of human rights, blacks' rights, women's rights, children's rights. Thank you, Christians. Thank you, Jesus. Thanks for giving us something nobody else had ever. Because
yes, that is absolutely true. That is definitely embedded in Christianity.
No, every Westerner.
But it's not just embedded in Christianity. It's also embedded in basic humanism.
Well, that would be another conversation, and I would disagree with that completely, actually. But I think that the fact that you even are aware of it, you presume is a humanistic intrinsic DNA. It's not. It's Christian worldview that's become so permeated in the West that you actually think it's who you are. You don't even.
Well, it's also in the Greek.
Tom Holland, just read Dominion by Tom Holland, an atheist, and he proves, as all people who have done objective history, modern science, all of the idea of the ethics and the review of giving dignity to all people, no class systems, it's all Christian. It just is. It's not up for debate anymore. It's either you believe in truth or you don't. Doesn't mean you have to be Christian.
Okay, let's stop you as a rhetorician.
All right.
You can't, as a rhetorician, you can do it wherever you want, but as a rhetorician, you can't make that last statement.
Which one?
It's been proven, it's true, it's not up for debate
The
anymore.
history of it, of where these ideas and ethical claims come from, is historical Christianity.
Even that, like, that's a claim, and you cited sources,
Yeah.
but the Greeks were humanists, and they had a very ecumenical, everybody has value approach to their philosophy. So
they had slaves. They had sex with children. They had sex with children.
Slaves.
They believed that people should be slaves because that's where they belong. Because of the
and Christians had slaves.
No. Listen to me. The Greeks believed that a woman is for procreation, and
some of the Greeks,
sex is for 10-year-old boys. If I just want to get off.
Some of the Greeks.
The Greeks believe. They also believe that.
I'm going to rhetorician you. Some of the Greeks.
Oh, well, I mean, okay, but basically those who had the higher echelon of power essentially believed that there was something inherently wrong with labor. They were thought provokers and rhetoricians, and they felt that was a higher class of humans, and those who were slaves deserved to be. Those who were darker complected because they worked out in the sun was thought of less than, because it means you were a laborer. So they had a class system. It was intrinsic in their nature. Only when Christianity incorporated the beauty of logic and reason into the truth of Christianity did we come up with the ethical standard of why humans are intrinsically valuable. That's simply what has happened in the West. It's who we are. That's why it's difficult for me to listen to humanists steal the leverage and the power that Christianity gave and not at least give it credit. You don't have to be a Christian to use Christian ethics.
But you find the same principles in Buddhism and Hinduism. Like, religions always have a humanism.
It can't be the same principles of Buddhism if their ultimate objective is nothingness, because that is absurd.
Right, that's semantics, though.
Okay, but
bliss, the ultimate, heaven and being bliss and being one with God it's semantic difference than nothingness.
Oh, okay. Well, I mean, I guess that's the tricky part of rhetoric. To me, nothing.
It's not. I'm never tricky.
No. I'm
never
just
trying to be tricky.
what I mean is, I don't mean that that was nefarious. I mean that I just take the idea of nothing as literal. Even those like the materialist humanist quantum mechanics who try to act as though something can come from nothing in a quantum vacuum when in fact there's something within there that is simply moving in different directions. That's not nothing. That's not nothing. That's something that's just in anarchy that eventually coincides to something based on our observance of it. So they manipulate the word because their worldview doesn't sustain it in reality. Christianity does give us that. That's all I'm saying. All I care about is the truth. You don't have to be a Christian. I just want people to say to me that if I feel hurt and offended and broken and deeply maligned because of the color of my skin, and somebody treated me with despicably, based on an immutable trait that I have no way of defending. I'm black. I consider that immoral. Now, I consider it immoral because you've done something evil against a fellow child of God or someone made in the image of God. That's what Christianity taught us. So if we all agree that what I just said is true, that you shouldn't treat a human based on that immutable trait by which they have no control over, how can it not equally apply if you do the same thing to me based on my color? Now, if you're trying to say that somehow it doesn't matter because that color has oppressed people, then that isn't equity, that's revenge. And revenge is immoral.
Well, it's social, yeah, it's social it's not retribution, it's recompense. So it's
Yes.
saying that the way the culture's run for a long time is that the white culture has been the advantaged culture, so we need to counterbalance it. And it's like I was from, like, when I got my PhD, was a time when DEI, and there's a lot of movement to try to get, equity in hiring in higher education. And it was very difficult for me to get, as a white guy who was not a super academic, wasn't like I'd already published books and things like that. It was difficult for me to get interviews. And even in TV, like when I broke into TV on the first job that I was on, they had to dictate to do a minority hire on the writing staff from the corporation, because the writing staff was all white guys. And they're like, we can't hire you. They never hired me. I was there a year and a half, and I was never hired officially because they didn't want to add me to the roles. So it's a demographic readjustment. And it's absolutely built on the idea that this may not be fair to individuals, but we're going to counterbalance an inequity by counterbalancing it in the other direction. And that is an absolute truth. And that is that fair? Socially or societally, as a historical forces, maybe. Is it fair to individuals? Absolutely not. Like if you're raising up one individual to get more advantage in any system, that's an unfair system.
Based on what?
Well, based on anything. Well, based on like any kind of like.
Wait a minute.
Everybody has the same opportunity.
Wait a minute. I created the system. It's my country. It's my power. It's my authority. It's my military. It's my ideology. I won. Who are you to tell me that it's unfair? Unless there's a transcendent force by which we all bow the knee and have to agree this supersedes my desire to have control, and that is the Judeo-Christian ethic of the West. Once again, we have to return back to where it started.
Or humanist principles. Like, let's be good to each other.
Why should, you just told me how you were treated racially and ethnically unfairly based on something you had no control over, the color of your skin. You didn't make yourself white. It doesn't matter. It's just melanin. It has nothing to do with your thoughts.
Right. But statistically, like, again, are we making decisions for individuals or for society? Like, I was in Louisville when they started forced busing, where they're like, hey,
that worked like a charm too, didn't it? Didn't that work like a charm?
It was chaos. It was awful. But, the white schools have been overprivileged. The black schools have been underprivileged. Let's bus them to each other's schools. Like, okay, that's a crazy idea, and they tried it and everything exploded, and it was not very sophisticated form of dealing with this issue.
Yeah.
I think we'd all agree that, that sounds like an issue. Black schools underfunded and black kids getting different educations. Like, that's an issue. The question is what we're going to do about it. And a lot of times societies and governments and everything else are very ham-handed. They're very, unsophisticated in their solutions. And that's where we get real, strife within the culture.
Yeah.
And I think you feel that. You can tell that you feel it. You feel like being oppressed as a Christian, as not being able to be, openly this or openly that and get accepted. Like where I'm from, like in rhetoric and academics, it doesn't matter where you're from. It doesn't matter what you believe, who you are. It's the quality of your ideas.
Wait, what did you just say? Wait. What did you just say?
In academics, like the idea is that the quality of your ideas is supposed to is what matters, not the background you're coming from.
You're being ironic, right?
No, I was in
Wait,
academics for 20
did you
years.
just tell me? Wait. Did you just tell me that academia honors ideas that
I said, that's the idea.
that come from all points of view? Is that what you just said to me?
I said, what they look at is the quality of ideas. They don't honor ideas. They honor the quality of your idea.
Okay.
That's the idea of academics.
When is the last time you heard of a left-leaning professor or academic or philosopher or speaker who was disinvited from a campus? And then, when's the last time you heard a right-leaning conservative disinvited? When's the last time you heard a left-leaner get protested and shouted down? When's the last time you heard a right-leaner being protested and shouted down? When's the last time you heard that conservatives were equal in their representation in academia as opposed to the 90% or more left-leaning? Academia is gone. It is a lie. It is pure Marxist leftism.
Okay, let me ask you.
I talked to James Lindsay. I've talked to Professor Robert George.
Yes.
I mean,
if
you don't see that,
I worked in academics.
then you have
Direct
to
experience.
know. Then you have to know the pure interest in conservative perspective given equal access to academia. That's beyond even basic data.
Okay, think of it in two terms, okay? All academics and all educational institutions are political entities. That's one thing. That's not what I'm talking about. What I'm talking about is the way academics is designed is that it's the quality of your ideas that are supposed to get you noticed and
used
status.
to be. Yeah, used
Right.
to be.
If conservatives, and I've seen many, I went to a Stanley Fish, Dinesh D'Souza debate years ago, and Stanley Fish, hardcore leftist, cultural critic, and D'Souza, 4,000 Mules or whatever the movie was, hardcore, sort of right. And they're both very intelligent people, and it was great. Just sit there and listen to the debate and look at the quality of their ideas and go home and talk about it. And so there is that tradition. It's the quality of the ideas. Like, are you presenting them as in a quality way, or are you using pseudo logic, which is a real problem these days, because pseudo logic sits right next to logic.
Yeah.
And people can't tell the difference. Like, I study logic, I study argument, I study information theory because it's very, very complicated. And I find it interesting, and I know it's very useful in the world. But it's very difficult to distinguish it between pseudo-information, pseudo-argument, and pseudo-logic. And so as we're talking about this, it's very easy for suddenly a screed, like a blitzkrieg of pseudo-logic to come swarming into the conversation. And if we don't take our time and control it, like politically, I agree with you. Universities and academics does not tolerate conservative politics, hardly at all, but it's youth dominated. It's never, very, very good with conservatism all the way back to the 60s and everything else. But academically, it's a different discussion. If a conservative can come in with super ideas, and you used to have a big tradition in the GOP, even with their media figures like George Will and these guys that were very, very intellectual. They supported their arguments.
Well, I think that
different.
Now I see what you mean, and that's where the beauty of rhetoric is. And I hope all y'all watching see why a good, robust, intense conversation is so wonderful. I love to think. And to try to find answers. And ultimately, any conversation a person has, I believe, that isn't superficial. You should leave with one of two options. You more deeply convinced of the way you see the world, that it's true and you can defend it, or to re-examine or even abandon your point of view because it lacks the power and the truth and the veracity that it should have for you to maintain it. Because whatever you believe is going to cost you everything. It's how you're going to vote. It's how you're going to marry. It's how you're going to interact with others. It matters how you believe or what you believe is true, because it's going to affect the way you behave. So I love conversations with guys like you that are smart and interesting and have these perspectives, because I feel like if nothing else, we're getting somewhere. Maybe somebody can get some inspiration from watching us, and at least have some passion for what they believe and to stand for it, to never apologize for what is true. Certainly never apologize. Now, of course, that can be misconstrued.
Yeah,
You think
it
something's
gets us
true.
into trouble again, right?
Well, yeah. I mean, if you think something's true and you've been fooled, or you
Right.
have decided to choose a point of view, and as we all do with our presuppositional worldviews, we put up a grid to sort of lock off any dissent, so we can feel comfortable, and we sort of filter it. And I think that's one of the beautiful things about comedy, by the way, is I think it kind of it kind of brings down your defenses, and then you can bring some truth in. That's what Carlin did. That's what Pryor did. It's what Chappelle's doing. It's what I do as a conservative Christian comedian. Is I talk about these issues. I tell people, as a Christian, I'm forbidden to hate people, but I'm commanded to hate ideas that are different than God's. That's the difference. I don't attack humans. I attack ideas, and that's why it's
That's a
so.
good perspective.
Yeah, and that's why it's so important for me when you talked about the bigotry word, and how it sort of was given a special class of belonging to only one perspective and only one way of being defined, that it can only mean white against that. That's so abhorrent to me, because I love words so much, and I love clarity, and I love communicating so much. It's all I have. It's my
Yeah,
life.
yeah.
That
Sure.
that I don't screw around with it. And because I believe Jesus is God and he was the Logos, words are sacrosanct to me. And so I'm taken very seriously. And that's why those who choose to covet a word as only within their identity group, I consider abhorrent. You don't have the right to steal my access to an idea that is for humans, not just for you.
Well,
And I
good
don't.
luck. Good luck stealing it, because everybody fights over these words constantly. That's what
Yeah,
we do.
and we do, and it's because we care more about what we believe than what is true. And sometimes that's hazy.
Yeah. Well, again, one of the things I love about rhetoric is it won't let you do that. Right. Once you're a rhetorician, once you sign off on this idea that you're going to learn rhetoric and learn the principles of what it tells you how to approach the world, how to approach interactions, how to approach politics, then you have a new set of tools. And you're like, I don't care what I believe. I care about, is my side using ethical techniques to persuade others?
Yeah,
Can I shoot down unethical stuff? Can I think clearly because I understand logic and argument and information? And then people are fine. Like if you
yeah,
really train people up on this, we agree on most things. Most people agree on, the basics of treat others well, love each other, help people when they're in trouble.
yeah.
We agree on a lot. But the politics and the policies of that get very confusing. And I think rhetoric's just a clarity tool. It's a way to really help people think their way through it.
Well, and I don't mean to beat the dead horse, but what you just said is so important. And again, that's why I was so passionate about when we were discussing the idea of the word bigot, because I feel like it's being abused for where it can be valuable in really defining something. I've often said on my show, I mean, I don't know, you might enjoy my comedy only because even though
I
we
think
don't
you're
have
a
this.
good comic. I watched some of your stand-up. You're
Oh,
really
okay.
good on stage. You're a
Oh,
great performer.
thank you. Well, and I wasn't trying to get a pat on the back. I just meant just artist to artist, because you like words, and I would say my biggest influence, it's clear, was Carlin. Because
Oh yeah, you got some Carlin in you for sure.
I can't help it. I loved the idea of breaking words down and how we see. I just love that thing. I can't not be influenced. Now, there's not a. I'm sure you were. You can't have a modern comic that wasn't influenced by Carlin to some degree. He was so good, so smart, and diametrically opposed. He hated God, hated my people, mocked and ridiculed. I could separate that and still say, "But you're so good at your technique.
Oh yeah,
Bravo,
I agree. Yeah.
bravo, brother." And so but I often have said this in my show. I believe that the difference between, and by the way, if you'll notice, I never say liberal, I say left leaner. I don't have a problem with liberals. Classic liberals, Bill Maher's or, I don't know, Alan Dershowitz, I accept. I don't agree with their point of view, but they allowed me equal access to the table of ideas. We could actually speak about things. We both brought our best ammunition to the fight and let the people decide. And then we agreed to disagree agreeably. That was a liberal. I used to think they were my enemies. Boy, was I wrong. I would, God, please bring back the liberals. The left, and I learned this from Dennis Prager, is the problem because that's Marxism. That's dark. That is totalitarianism, despot, everything evil that happened in the 21st century. Through Mao and Soviet Union, Pol Pot. I mean, the evil, most nihilistic, atheistic, foundational Marxism to destroy and kill and rape and pillage came from that dark cancer, and I hate it, and so I fight it. But so I always say left and right. So I got way off on a soapbox there, but I say this to the conservative. At least my definition. If what I believe is in conflict with what is true, I change my belief. To the left, if what they believe is in conflict with what is true, they change the truth. And that's the problem that we have in America. If you were to tell people, Dan, I don't know if you have seminars, I don't know if you have books, and if so, that can be your answer. But if somebody wanted to kind of hear what we just have done today, and you go, man, that's kind of cool. I'd like to kind of dive in and see how this game works. Is there? And this is gonna be on my paywall for my subscribers, so you're gonna answer, but people are gonna have to subscribe to hear this answer. What is there a book? Is there a lecture, whether it's yours or somebody else's, that you would recommend as a kind of a primer starter 101 for people who want to begin the journey of, I want to learn about this rhetoric thing. This matters. What would you recommend?
Yeah, I have a couple of answers. So I have a podcast of my own. It's called Rhetoric Training for America.
So Dan, thank you for coming on, man. It was fun. I purposefully tried to not dive too deep in your background because I really wanted it to be organic. I kind of wanted to see, let me experience your perspectives on my own so that maybe I'll ask questions that people out there might actually be interested in. So I don't like to be too prepared. It's very extemporaneous what I do because I feel like it's more real and organic. But I appreciate what you're doing, man. It's important. I appreciate that you are training people. I appreciate your countenance, that you're very level-headed and able to be very even-keeled, which is crucial, I think, to a good rhetorician, because I'm not a rhetorician. I can allow my righteous indignation to just burst forth.
Yeah, you have such good emotion, man. It just fuels everything. Even your stand-up, it's like, I'm very laid back when I do stand-up, and I always admire guys that can just perform it, man. Just own it, and like I love that.
Well, as I said to you during part of our conversation was, because I didn't use curse words, because I didn't do sex jokes, I had to figure out, how do I compete with these guys who are in front of me that set the room up with the F and this and mother this and screwing her in the back seat jokes, and they've created a room tone. You know this, you're a comic. It's like, okay, now I got to shift gears. How am I going to do this? And so I think I ended up implementing more of a style more of facial things. Not because it was Brian Regan, but prior, frankly, to knowing him. I've been doing this since '88. More animated,
Yeah, yeah.
act out the thing. That's just, I think that was my way of making up for the F word. Is that here's how I'm gonna,
Totally makes sense.
yeah,
Yeah, great theory.
yeah. So that's what I did. But listen, thank you so much. Maybe we'll get on again sometime because clearly you have a great
Yeah.
perspective. Maybe down the road here as we get closer to November and the election, that might be a good time to re-talk about if everybody's screaming at each other, we might be able to bring some peace. I don't know. But folks, please go find Dan French, find his website. What is your website? Let's just throw it out there.
Yeah, Dr. Dan's World.
Dr. Dan's World. Go see that. He's going to help you, train you on how to think, how to, by being able to use words properly, to be concise, to be precise, to define your terms, to care about what you believe, to be able to interact with people and not get angry. Because if you have the truth, trust me, that's offensive enough. Don't have to be a jerk. The truth will offend, and it's supposed to, because that's how you know you don't have it. In the Christian world, it's called conviction. In the secular world, it's called your conscience. But it's the way God tells you. True north is that way. Let's turn you around. Thank Dan French for coming out, folks. Go see his stuff, buy his stuff, go check him out. And if he's ever in town, go see his comedy. He's a funny guy. And if he's not out in a club, he might be in a cruise ship. So do yourself a favor and take a cruise, because they're wonderful and they're fun. Just don't get in one of those metal cabins that you can't look out, because it's like being buried alive. It's horrific. My name is Brad Stine. New Yorker, call me God's comic. This is Brad Stine Has Issues, as I've always said. If someone says you're politically incorrect, say thank you for the compliment, because PC free is liberty. And as I always say, I'm just a comic. I don't know what the heck I'm doing, but I do know this. All I'm doing is putting the woke back to sleep. See you next Monday.